Scott Shepard, and I'm with Avenue Supported Living Services. We provide services in the North LA County area, specifically in Santa Clarita Valley and San Fernando Valley. We service just one regional center, the North LA County Regional Center in that area, and we provide supported living services and also a community integration program, which is a community-based day program where we provide services in the community. We assist people to get jobs, to volunteer, to go to the gym, to take community college classes or whatever people want to do, but it's real focus on inclusion within everyone's community. And we have a person-centered model, so we focus on each person, one person at a time, and figure out what their needs are and what they'd like to do and what supports they need, and we collaborate with the regional center to make that happen. So just a little housekeeping. We already have some recorded sessions in Spanish, Farsi, and Armenian. And if you've got a smartphone, you can actually put it up close to the screen where it says the Scan Me, and you can actually get linked to the website where you can gain access to those sessions. Again, translated in Spanish, Farsi, and Armenian. And you'll have to do the same thing for that one. You'll have to sign up and, put some basic information in there. And then you'll be able to access those sessions that we've already recorded. This webinar is being recorded. That way, we'll be able to have the best of our English webinars. We will also be posting online at the end of the 5 sessions that we have coming up. If you have any written feedback or any comments, please email us at cieinfo@avenuessls.org. So again, this series of webinars is being offered thanks to a grant from the California Department of Developmental Services in collaboration with North LA County Regional Center. And one of the requirements of the grant is that we administer a series of questions before and after the webinars. So we ask you to please complete our survey questions at the end of the webinar, as well as our follow-up questions that will be sent to you in April after the completion of this webinar series. Thank you in advance for completing these surveys. We know they're a little bit of a pain sometimes, and your privacy will be protected in the responses. So the upcoming webinars that we have, tonight, we're going to talk about Work is for Everyone. And again, you've got some wonderful presenters that will be sharing their stories. On March 14th, next Thursday, we're going to focus on increasing adult and youth knowledge of competitive integrated employment, or CIE, and the paid internship program, or PIP, and what those incentives consist of. These are incentives that are provided for CIE to vendors or providers of services that they can access once they assist somebody to achieve competitive integrated employment. And the paid internship program is actually a wonderful incentive the state is offering that will allow a person to be sort of an intern and to work in a setting where while they're working and learning the job, they can be paid at no expense to the employer. And the idea is, hopefully, if that's a job that's a good match and the person improves their skills and wants to continue working there, that then that employer would hire the person on. And that is happening across the state. But sometimes the paid internship is an opportunity to try out a job, and the person might not like it, or it might not be a good match. And then they can transition to another possible internship situation. And we'll talk more about that next week, as well as talking about other community employment-related resources, services, and supports that are available to people as they look at working. On March 21st, we're going to talk about navigating and maintaining Social Security benefits. That includes both SSI and SSDI, also Medi-Cal, and other essential benefits while working. There's a lot of wonderful work incentives in place. And what we want to get across both today and in future webinars is that it's always going to be more beneficial for people to work, even though they may have some of their SSI benefits decrease the more they work. They're always going to be making more money while they're working and make use of these Social Security work incentives that are available. And we're going to talk about that and what everybody's responsibilities are for work reporting, for reporting their wages. And Jareth, in fact, you're going to be on that one and helping out too, right?
Yeah.
Because Jareth's going to talk about his responsibilities for wage reporting and what he's had to do over the years. And sometimes it's a pain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then March 28th, we're going to focus on finding a good job match using discovery and person-centered practices to identify job duty and other environmental preferences, how to use job carving and our own community connections to promote success while developing and assessing each person's talents and skills. And we've got a few tools that we'll be sharing that night as well that we think are really simple and straightforward, but we've found to be very beneficial for assisting people, whether we're assisting people that have a work history or whether we're assisting people with very complex needs that have never had the opportunity to work. And then our final session in this series will be on April 4th, and we're going to focus on bridging the gap, using job development strategies to promote diversity in the workplace, and how hiring workers with disabilities can improve both morale and positive company outcomes. And we'll focus a bit on job development. If you're a service provider or a family member or a self-advocate, and you're looking at, okay, how do I find a job? We'll focus a little bit on that. So most of you have probably registered already, but Donna has reminded me that if you're using somebody else's link tonight, if somebody else signed up and they forwarded you the link that they signed up with, we ask you to please maybe put in the chat your contact info so that we can send you those registration questions, because we need that initial data at least for the grant that is being funded through the Department of Developmental Services. And again, if you know of other people that might be interested in signing up for the webinars that we have upcoming, they can do so at our website at www.avenuessls.org. Okay, and there's a little button right on there when they go to our website, and they can click on that, and that will take them to the link to sign up and register. So that gets into starting our webinar here. So why should people with intellectual and developmental disabilities work? Well, it's natural to work. Most people do. As wage earners, people gain more control over their lives and become less dependent on Social Security, like supplemental security income or Social Security disability income. And that's a good thing, because people have more status and they won't be living in poverty if they also have some opportunity to have some work income, some employment income that can assist them. Being employed at a quality job and becoming a taxpayer has a valued role, a role valued by ourselves, by family, and by society. Employment also expands people's social networks. You're able to meet more people through work, after work, and that will really be it can really be a positive thing for lots of people, including myself. I met my wife at a previous job. We both worked in the same field. And then I think, as you would say, Jareth, duh for the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, as I just shared before, adults who don't work will live in poverty and have less control over their lives if they only rely on supplemental security income and government resources. People with disabilities, again, we'll be harping this point for every session, will always be better off financially when they work. even when their SSI benefits are adjusted down due to their work income, people will always earn more money when they work than when they're on SSI or receiving SSDI alone. We also want to utilize families, friends, and colleagues to develop employment connections. When you're at an IEP or an IPP meeting, one of the questions we should always ask is, what do the families do? Do they work at a business? Do they have their own business? Do they have other family members that might have businesses? What are those businesses, and do they have employment needs? Could we check out those places of employment and maybe provide an opportunity for some of our folks to maybe take a tour and see if that's an environment they might want to work in? They can help provide mock interviews and maybe even have an opportunity for people to interview if that's something we think would be a good job match. We also want to do the last one on the list here is we want to find out and ensure that that motivations to work are in place. Okay. In other words, how will having a job make a significant difference in the individual's quality of life? Okay, because if there's no change in their quality of life once they're working from when they're not working, sometimes that job will fall apart if the person doesn't have a motivation to continue. So Jareth's going to talk a lot about his motivations today. Sometimes it's just something as simple as we have a couple of gals that we support that having a working girls lunch, making sure they get to go out and eat a little bit more often because they have a paycheck. Or with Dan, who's really into music, he gets to buy a new musical instrument to add to his collection as a result of working. And we need to find out, how will it make a difference, and make sure that people have access to that money when they earn it, and to make sure it's not just hoarded or kept by a money manager or a residential home, or sometimes even a parent that's thinking ahead for the future. We want to make sure that each person has an opportunity to blow at least part of their paycheck on something. And Jareth, what's that a picture of on the right?
Me, my boss, and then former Mayor Jason Gibbs.
Jason Gibbs. That was at our October Santa Clarita Mayor's Employment Committee, and focusing on connecting employers and people with disabilities to get jobs. And you and your boss Rachel from Coles actually made a presentation and got certificates, I think from Senator Wilk's office.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so expectations are really important. And Eric Carter has done a lot of research on elevating parent expectations when it comes to work for their sons and daughters. So in collecting national data from over 11,000 youth in all special education categories, they looked at predictors for post-school employment outcomes of young adults with significant disabilities. The findings were that young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities whose parents expected them to obtain post-school work in high school were more than 5 times as likely to have paid community employment within 2 years after exiting school. So we know that parents really drive the system, and we want to encourage family members to learn how to advocate and to and really bring their advocacy to the IEP meetings to help advocate for their sons and daughters, and to demand that their sons and daughters have opportunities to have real work experiences, real work opportunities while they're still in high school. There continues to be an urgent need for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to have access to quality, person-centered, and customized community supports and services that will assist them to achieve successful employment outcomes. And in California right now, as many of you have heard, we're facing a significant budget shortfall this year. And as a result, the governor has done what both this governor and previous governors have done for a long time. They're looking to cut services for the that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families receive through the regional center system. And one of the things we have to do is really advocate with our local legislators and others to say, please, we need to build up the system. Our system has been chronically underfunded for years. And we had a promised rate increase that was going to be coming in to allow both the regional centers to hire more staff and to help promote opportunities for service providers to hire more staff that were really hard hit during the pandemic. And now they're looking at cutting or delaying that increase. And so we don't want that to happen. So we encourage you to contact your local legislators, and we'll even give you a sign up next week of where you can send an email and share your support for providers that are providing supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The State Council on Developmental Disability passed an employment first policy for the state in October of 2013. And that statement reads the following: it's the policy of the state that opportunities of integrated competitive employment shall be given the highest priority for working age individuals with developmental disabilities, regardless of the severity of their disabilities. So that means everybody. And in North LA County Regional Center, I was on the vendor advisory committee, and we worked together on our committee and also with the board of the regional center to implement our own employment first policy in March of 2015. And North LA passed the employment first policy that will expect and prepare persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities to seek, acquire, and maintain community-based employment alongside employees without disabilities earning at or above minimum wage, and to increase the number of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are gainfully employed within regular, competitive, and inclusive jobs within the community, earning at or above minimum wage. And the full document, I've got a link there that you can use if you want to see the full document. But it continues that the philosophy at North LA is that regardless of the severity of disability, people work. Our philosophy at North LA County Regional Center is to expect independence and self-sufficiency for its citizens from birth through adult life. It is our collective responsibility to create, advocate, and deliver supports and services that provide our citizens opportunities to be as independent and self-sustaining as possible throughout their lifetime. And again, for values, employment is an expectation, not an option. Employment occurs in a broad variety of roles and settings. Employment is inclusive, integrated, and compensated competitively. Integrated employment will be the first option considered for every adult we support. So what that means is that when people exit school-funded services, the first option they should be presented with through the regional center should include some way to gain competitive integrated employment, whether that's through a community integration program or self-determination or whatever that service is, or whether it's through traditional supported employment. We want to make sure that the people within North LA County, at least, are offered employment as an option. And again, employment first doesn't mean that employment's the only option, nor does it mean that employment is to be forced upon people served. It simply means that employment, fully integrated, community-based employment earning at or above minimum wage, will be considered first, and that all goals developed and service provided shall be done with that outcome in mind. For children, adolescents, and young adults, we want to ensure that we're supporting families and providers in promoting independence in their children through skill development and natural experiences, which lead to maximizing their opportunities for employment and active community membership when they enter adulthood. For adults, we want to support persons served in obtaining and maintaining gainful community-based employment within an integrated, competitively compensated setting. Intended outcomes for North LA are that we see a significant increase in the number of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who engage in integrated employment, and a significant increase in the number of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who earn at or above minimum wage, and a significant increase in the number of transition plans, which include employment outcomes and related services for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are 14 years of age or older. So we want this to happen while people are still youths, while they're still in school. We want to make sure that they have goals that are going to assist them in gaining the skills they need to be competitively employed. All right, would you invite Heather in? We are going to let Heather share her presentation. Heather, you ready? And Jareth will be back in a minute. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
All right, well, thank you for coming in.
Yes.
Okay, so this one's your presentation.
Yes.
Ready?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk about why work is important to Heather.
Yes.
And Heather and I have known each other, my goodness, since you and your family moved out here
Yes.
in 1987 to Santa Clarita.
Yes.
Okay, you want to close the door? Would that be better?
Sure.
Yeah. So that way we don't hear everybody else. All right. Okay. So Heather, when you first came out here, you were in a behavior management day program, and I happened to run that. And she also went to a Saturday program, which was like sort of a 6th day of service. And it was eligible for both kids and adults that live with their families. And on Saturdays, we would go out and do fun stuff in the community.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's a picture of you with your mom and your sister and your nephew. So it took us a while to notice that she really liked to spend time in the community as opposed to a classroom or a program setting where sometimes she got trapped in some routines. But Heather had a blast when she's in the community, was obviously very happy, and she experienced challenges in that segregated program. So luckily, we were able to listen to Heather, and she began to work. And Heather has had lots of jobs.
Yes.
At Foster's Freeze, Carl's Jr. And where do you work now?
Floor.
Edwards
Theater.
Edwards Theater. And so Edwards, I guess it's called Regal now, right?
Yes.
All right. And Heather continues to work there twice a week.
Yes.
And you've worked there since 1998?
Yes.
Now, Heather has a job coach full-time that attends with her, and she's had a job coach for the full time of her employment. In the past, that might have been called a behavior aid, but it's become a job coach because that's what we do now. And we support people in individualized settings in the community. And these are some pictures since 1998 of you working.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you do at Edwards?
I was to wash waterscape, I just right the floor.
Wash windows and do some sweeping too. Okay. And where else do you work?
Mushrooms.
And you've worked at Marshall's over 20 years.
Yes.
So this is a long time for employment. In fact, we just got a referral for a staff member that was referred by her manager at Marshall's.
Yeah.
He wanted to get some additional meaningful work in the community, and it happens to be the husband of her boss. And now he's working for us.
Yeah.
And it's all due to you, Heather, because you were able to get that referral.
Yes.
So what do you do at Marshall's?
Hang out the clothes.
So you hang up the clothes, okay? And she works in the lingerie department. And I know one time, We had a job coach that was out sick and I had to go do the coaching, and thank goodness Heather knew the job because I had no ideas there was that many sizes and shapes of lingerie.
Yes.
Again, she has a support from a full-time job coach. So this is not a Department of Rehab support. This is actually funded through the regional center, through the community integration program or day program. We also have some other people that we actually provide their coaching supports through supported living services. So we do a lot of supports non-traditionally. We work with the regional center and collaborate with them to find out what supports seem to work best, or what's the vendorization that seems to work the best. Because that's something that families and individuals shouldn't have to worry about. That should be what we, the service provider and the regional center, sort of work on behind the scenes to find out what supports make the most sense and to make sure that they work for the person. So your employers describe you as dependable and hardworking. And I believe that Heather's a classic example of a person whose skills were underestimated in a special day class setting and other segregated environments. In fact, I think if she was still there, they might still think she's not ready to work because she would act accordingly in those environments. So again, you enjoy being active and engaged in your community.
Yes.
And sometimes he does get stuck in some routines.
Yes.
When you first moved to California, your parents moved in a cul-de-sac
Yes.
where they had a lot of space around the house.
Yes.
And in the past, you had some accommodations built to help with some soundproofing, to help with neighbors. But now I think you've really adjusted to life. You're doing great. We still have some bumps in the road at times, but we work through them and provide the support you need.
Yes.
And you love to go on 5Ks,
Yeah.
like the bubble run and all this other stuff.
Yes.
And that's another opportunity for Heather to give back, because most of these 5K runs are for different causes in the community.
Yeah.
And Heather enjoys walking, and Heather meets a lot of similar-minded people for different causes in the community. What else do you like?
Has an art mind.
You like getting your nails done?
Yes.
Yeah, and you got your hair all done up today. That's really cool.
Yes.
And then last week, we had the opportunity to actually go to a conference where Heather presented, and to the Capitol. And that's a picture from the Capitol where we did some legislative visits.
Yes.
Okay. So Heather, it says you live in your house in Saugus with your roommate Gloria, and you split the rent and utilities.
Yes.
And you spend your work earnings on vacations to Santa Barbara, Aspendell,
Yeah.
San Diego, Las Vegas, Ventura, lots of places.
Yes.
And she also shares her stories with legislators, like here's with Assembly Member Tom Lackey and LA County Supervisor Barger. So, and it's very powerful when Heather, who's a constituent, is able to share those stories.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
By sharing.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's get Jareth in here now.
Yes.
Okay, Jareth.
Since she can't really hear right now, I think it's important to note that all of the things that Heather did in the segregated day program and at home, they didn't get cured by her having a job. You know, we still have she has quite a bit of padding in her shared walls so that the neighbors don't hear her. But when she's at work and when she's engaged in obviously meaningful activities, we don't see any of those things, right?
And yeah, and we know it makes a difference. She was so smiley at the Capitol for 4 days last weekend at the conference, and she was in her element. It was awesome. It was really great. But Yeah, and she knows she's making a difference. And like I said, I've known her for a long time, and it's just really really proud to see where she's come and what she's doing. So Jareth, I'm going to go through just a couple more slides on competitive integrated employment, but then you're up next.
All right.
Okay. All right. So I want to give just a brief overview of competitive integrated employment and the paid internship program and some of the incentives that are available today. We'll go more in depth next week. But competitive integrated employment, or you'll hear the term CIE, these incentives are now available to regional center service providers who place individuals into competitive integrated employment, either full-time or part-time. And that means working at minimum wage or better in a typical setting. It can't be a segregate setting only with people with disabilities. It has to be integrated. Incentives as of July 1st, 2021 are that the service provider will receive $2,000 after 30 consecutive days of competitive integrated employment. They're eligible to receive an additional $2,500 after 6 months of consecutive employment, and $3,000 in addition after 12 consecutive months if they're still employed at that job. And I know, what did we do? We got the first couple incentives for you. Where'd you take your team?
To Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory, yeah. So Jareth got to pick where we're going, and he invited all his team members, anybody that's a coach.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the paid internship program, or PIP, is meant to increase vocational skills and abilities of those who want to participate in an internship. The intern is paid minimum wage or better, either by the employer, the service provider, or the financial management service, who are then reimbursed by the regional center. Now, the paid internship program offers up to 1,040 hours of paid internship per year. Now, this internship doesn't have to just be at one place. It can be broken up into multiple internships. Like I mentioned earlier, it can be somebody tries a job out for 3 months. They might spend several hundred hours of that internship there. And then they try something else, and they can utilize up to 1,040 hours per year at one or more internships while they're sort of learning the ropes to see if it's a good match. So supports that are used to obtain competitive integrated employment and which are eligible for paid competitive CIE incentives include the traditional supported employment services that you would receive through Department of Rehab or Voc Rehab. So this is what we typically call supported employment, and which most regional centers, that's often the first option that you'll get referred to, is through traditional supported employment with a job coach where you might fade back some of that support, et cetera. But those agencies are able to qualify for that CIE incentive when they assist people to get jobs. But also under the CIE incentives, other vendors or service providers that are able to access those incentives include traditional day programs like community integration program, supported living services or independent living skills services, ILS, residential providers or group homes, the self-determination program, and any regional center vendored service provider that is vendored with a regional center. As long as you have one vendored service with the regional center, you're eligible to add an addendum to your existing vendorization that can add either the CIE incentive for competitive integrated employment when you help someone get a job, or the paid internship program incentive, which would assist somebody to get an internship. So you have to add the addendum and request that through your regional center and do a little more paperwork to add the addendum for one or both of these incentives for you to be eligible. For competitive integrated employment and or the paid internship program to be approved, the individual receiving services, the regional center consumer, must have an IPP goal that states that they are interested in seeking and gaining employment. Okay. So that's one of the things that the regional center has to check off to make sure the incentive can be granted, is that the person actually had a goal for competitive integrated employment. So even if you don't have anything in mind right now for employment, or you might not even have a plan for employment, we encourage you to assist anyone who might be interested in the extra income to at least have a goal that they want to explore or work towards competitive integrated employment. That way, if you have a job that turns out to be a good match and you jump on it and you assist them to become employed, it's already in their IPP and the incentive will be easily granted. Lori, did you want to share a little bit about the SDP or self-determination program and the CIE incentives?
Sure. So at this time, CIE and PIP are outside of the SDP budget. So what that means is that you don't have to add it to your budget and then put it on your spending plan. It happens outside of that. You do need to go through a traditional vendor. So if you don't have any traditional vendors, you're not really able to take advantage at this point of the CIE incentives. Some FMSs are vendored to provide the PIP.
That would be a financial management service.
Yeah, some of the financial management services through SDP are able to provide the PIP incentives. So you would check with your financial management service and see if they're signed up. I know that there is an attempt to find a way to get CIE paid for SDP participants who do not use any traditional vendors, but at this point it has not happened. So you would need to have at least one traditional vendor that assisted with getting that job in order to get the CIE incentives.
In order to access the incentives.
Yeah.
So it's just we've still got that glitch within SDP, and it's only in a small handful of cases, but we're working on that. Supports that can assist in obtaining a paid internship through the paid internship program, or people that are in school also have an availability for workability, which is funded through the Department of Education. When you're school age, you want to advocate to have a goal for employment and work-based learning experiences and or paid internships in your individualized education plan. And once you get old enough, once you turn 16, you want that included in your individualized transition plan, which is a part of your IEP. Again, workability is an option. They have some hours, but our experience is that those workability hours are usually reserved for certain groups of students. I know that when Heather was in school, she was never considered to be a person that would be a good candidate for workability. So she was never offered that when she was in school. She never had any real work experiences until she exited school. So, and we know that that happens a lot with workability. But this paid internship program provides additional hours, and many districts are now actually applying to become vendors of the regional center so that they can offer the paid internship program to their students that have intellectual and developmental disabilities. So both the CIE incentives and the paid internship program incentives are available to consumers of the regional center. Okay. So again, any regional center vendor service provider can assist with a paid internship program. Providers simply need to add an addendum for the paid internship program and have enough funds to pay for the internship program prior to getting reimbursed through the regional center. And again, important to have that goal in your IPP. Lori, I think there's something in the chat.
Yes. For the incentives, the consumer's employment goal must be individualized and job specific. If someone is at a job as part of their schedule because that is where they were placed due to an opening in the program schedule, that would not be considered individualized unless the consumer specifically requested to work there as part of their employment goals. And this is essential. So when you're working on writing an addendum or making sure that this is listed in your IPP with Regional Center, you want to be you need to be specific, but you also want to be broad enough that a job that comes up that you might not have been thinking of could still match that criteria. Depending on the regional center, most regional centers will ask for, let's say, 3 specific things about this job that the person would be looking for. And looking at Heather's worked in retail, but she does 2 totally different things in retail, right? She sorts the garments at Marshall's and she does some janitorial kind of stuff at the theater. And so we wouldn't want to be very specific and say Heather is looking for a janitorial type job, because then that theater the Marshalls wouldn't have worked. Additionally, are the employment opportunities mainly community-based, or do you guys provide services for persons who have bachelor's degrees? So that's the second question. So I'll get to that in a sec, or Scott will. What we try to do with our guys who we're not quite sure what exact specific industry they might be working in is we write the things that would be important. So for some of our guys, the socialization aspect is really important to their job. So they wouldn't want to necessarily be in the back room sorting clothes. They would want to be out and interacting with people, whether they were customers or coworkers or whatever. So we'll put that as one of the criteria because we know that back office kind of job is really not what they're looking for. So in that case, if a provider found them a job like this person is saying, found a job folding silverware before the restaurant opened, that doesn't really qualify for what that person was looking for. So you don't have to say specifically Jareth wants to work at the Nike store, but you do have to say that he's interested in a retail job or something that will really kind of narrow down the type of job the person is looking for, but not necessarily exclude potential jobs that could come up, if that makes sense. And so the second person, Scott, is saying, are the employment opportunities mainly community-based, or do you guys provide services for persons who have bachelor's degree?
Well, even people that have bachelor's degrees, I think we would, we would use the term community-based for employment, if they're looking for something, because everything is pretty much in the community as opposed to, let's say, in a sort of a segregated kind of site. We do have some people that have connected with us that are interested in like what many people are. I'd like to work from home, and those jobs are tougher to come by right now. But we have a gentleman that is a consumer of North LA Regional Center that is looking at working from home. He doesn't have his BA. He has limited computer skills, but we're helping him explore that option to see if it's going to be viable or not. We assisted another gentleman to receive his 4-year degree at Cal Arts and in the area of computer animation and doing filmmaking and things like that. And then we worked with both Department of Rehab, IHSS, and a regional center to sort of collaborate to provide the assistance he needed in the dorms, the tutoring assistance he needed in the classroom, and things like that due to his physical disability. And Department of Rehab then assisted with his future goals, which, because we didn't have all that experience, he knew a lot more about the computer animation and the process of putting together a film. We didn't have the experts to do that. So a lot of that job development actually happened both through the connections he had at the college or the university, as well as through Department of Rehab. I don't know if that answers that at all.
I think the person is asking basically, do we just have janitorial jobs or do we have some, blue collar, white collar, and I think the answer is yes, we will help people to advance up the career ladder, whether or not it's because of a degree related or experience related. I think at that point, it does become a little harder to find a job coach with some of the people who have some advanced skills, because they have to also be able to fit into that work environment. Most of our guys are 24/7, so not everybody, but they do need that support. So
Garrett's going to give a good example of working your way up the ladder.
right.
And he's going to do that in just a sec. So hopefully that will really help. Okay. So factors that continue to promote successful student outcomes continue to be paid work experiences during high school, even though many high schools will say, oh, wait till you get into the regional center after school for that. Keep pushing. Parent involvement, super important. Having a network of family and friends, receiving community-based instruction, and having a good job match. Again, real simple stuff, but these still can continue to be factors that lead to successful employment. So one question I'll ask everybody is, what does research show is the primary reasons for job loss among young adults with disabilities? And I included 4 options here. It's the answer is one of these. Do you think it's behavioral issues, having a lack of skills or ability to learn and perform the job, a lack of acceptance by coworkers and employers, or perhaps a lack of social skills? If anybody want to put in the chat?
I'll watch the chat for you.
Okay. What do you think, Jareth? Why do people get...
Okay, we've got behavior, we've got social skills, we've got all of the above.
Jareth likes all the above too.
Behavior.
And actually, the largest correlation, the primary reason for job loss, the researchers have found, is actually social skills deficits. And that's one of the reasons why we really want to promote and push opportunities for inclusion at a young level in school, because that's one thing that as an adult service provider, we can't provide. We can only provide it once a person gets out of school, but the chances are they might have lost all that time. I think we're finding out and experiencing that the pandemic did a horrible disservice to our youth with and without a disability, because they were separated and isolated from other people, and they didn't have those social opportunities. And that's multiplied for all the folks that with significant disabilities that really needed that human contact and those social opportunities to help work on those skills. But anything we can do to promote inclusion in the school and in all areas of life, that will really assist people to get and develop some of those important job skills. So again, how do we improve social and communication skill development? We should always push for school inclusion with typical peers. Try to increase general education electives if the individual is not already fully included in mainstream courses. Try to avoid pull-out therapies and request that they be done in natural settings. Example, if they're going to work on their communication, have them work on it in a classroom setting or in the cafeteria setting or library or on the playground. Okay. Turn taking with general ed peers instead of having some private pull-out thing where they're then missing more opportunities for that social integration. Ensure that for people with speech generating devices, ensure that they use a voice that's of the same gender and hopefully the same age as the user. Also ensure that the student can use their speech generating devices for topics other than academics outside the classroom, so they can use it socially. Also assist students to enroll in clubs and groups on campus that are related to their interests with the support and accommodations they need to promote successful inclusion. So this is something we can do right away, especially for our youth, is make sure they have opportunities for inclusion to improve that social and communication skill development. It's also important to remember that volunteering is a pathway to employment. Volunteers have a 27% higher likelihood of finding a job after being out of work than non-volunteers. Volunteers without a high school diploma have a 51% higher likelihood of finding employment than non-volunteers. Volunteers living in rural areas have a 55% higher likelihood of finding employment than non-volunteers. And that's something even in our search for employees, we really look at what are you doing right now? If you're just sitting at home in your mom's basement, we're wondering about your motivation to work. But if you're actively volunteering, even if you're not working at the time, or if you're in school pursuing your education, those are all real pluses that we look for in potential employees. And again, we can't emphasize enough how important it is to have integrated work-based experiences in school as part of your ITP or IEP transition plan. Advocate for work-based learning opportunities in your IEP and IPP. Again, volunteerism and developing a resume of experience will help lead to employment. All right, Jareth, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hello, I'm Jareth Swade. Taking control of my life wasn't easy, but working sure did help.
This over.
When I first moved into my own place in 2008, I didn't really care about making decisions in my life. I had meltdowns when things didn't go my way. After high school, I went through career transitioning services, but I didn't like going to their disability classes. So I took few classes at College of the Canyons on my own, volunteered with the COC football team.
Okay, so talking about that for a sec. So that's when we met you when you were 19.
Yeah,
And again, so you went to high school at where?
at Valencia.
And you had a lot of friends there.
Yeah.
But then what was different about Valencia High School and then when you went to the transition program?
I was in the classroom all day.
And who else was in the classroom? Your friends? Or people with disabilities?
People with disabilities.
And did you want to be in a classroom with all students with disabilities?
No. I wanted to be in classrooms with my friends.
So when you took some classes at College of the Canyons, what were you able to do while you were there?
Be in classes with my friends.
Okay. And then what else did you get to help out with when you were on College of the Canyons campus?
The sports teams.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I helped out with the football team during the fall. And then I got to interact with the coaches and for the other teams, and then they asked me if I wanted to help out with their teams, but I was mostly with the CLC football team, and then I started helping out with baseball and then the women's basketball team.
Okay.
I started telling my doctor that I felt too sleepy during the day. I felt that I was over medicated, at which made me sleepy and overweight. Now I got off some meds that made me sleepy and tired. Now I'm awake enough to make a difference in my life and try to deal with tough situations that come up. I used to fall asleep in IP meetings, doctor's visits. I thought I had no reason to stay awake. I learned how to express myself at IP meetings and not sleep through them.
All right. And that's a picture of where?
At the John Wooden Awards.
All right. And yeah, you're going to UCLA this Saturday too.
Yeah.
So what's that a picture of?
That's a picture of my old daily checklist.
Do you use that anymore?
No,
How come?
because I have everything in my already planned.
Got it in your head now.
Yep.
So when you first transitioned, we used that for a little while, a year or so maybe,
Yeah.
no more than that. Just, little things to help him to remind himself to take responsibility for like plugging your cell phone in at night so you don't have to be mad the next morning when it's out of juice. Do you have your bus pass? Do you have your keys? Do you have your cell phone? Things like that.
Yeah.
Those are things that you got to learn when you live on your, or, live in your own place, right?
Yeah.
And, but once you got that, we don't have to worry about it. But sometimes we need that to help bridge the gap while people are learning skills.
Yeah. Now ask me who plans my day, my week, and my life. I do. At heart, it was first, but now I budget my own money from my paychecks to pay my cell phone bill, my cable. I pay my own since I wanted the sports channels. I split the rent, internet, utility bills with my roommates. Getting a paycheck helps. After 4 years working at Six Flags, I worked at Target for 5 years, got a second job at the movie theater over a year, but I didn't like closing late at night and sweating outside in the heat on hot days.
And so, yeah, so Target, that was your first really long-term job. So let's talk a little bit. Before you were at Target, you got employment through traditional supported employment when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah.
And you worked at Bonds, and you went through voc rehab.
Mhm.
And what did they tell you about the job? Because you had a little challenge with a job coach.
I used to have the job coach hover over me.
Did you like that?
No,
Did you like it when the job coach gave you instruction?
no,
Why?
because I want the main boss to tell me what to do.
Oh, was the job coach your boss?
No, the main boss is.
So Jareth really didn't appreciate the traditional supported employment model of having a job coach sort of not, you didn't want them hovering around you.
Yeah,
And you also didn't want them sort of telling you what to do because they're not the person that hired you.
correct.
And so he really appreciates having a relationship with your manager.
Yeah,
Okay. And I think that was really super important and something that we had to really listen to. So did you have a job coach every day at Six Flags?
no,
Okay. What about a Target?
no,
Okay. And the other thing, I think you don't really like a job coach hovering around you because it makes you feel a little different
no,
in front of your coworkers.
correct.
And you don't want that really.
No,
So Department of Rehab canned Jareth after a couple of meltdowns. You told your job coach off a few times, right?
yeah,
And Department of Rehab said he wasn't ready to work. And his short-term jobs that were rocky already finished at that point. Right?
yeah,
And then after a while, after a few months, he said, "Hey, I want to earn some money again." And he actually took the initiative. He wanted to try it out at Six Flags, and that's very typical. A lot of the teenagers and young adults in Santa Clarita work there. And working there for 4 years is actually pretty good.
yeah,
So he worked there for 4 years and then sort of, okay, that's about done with that. Did
Yeah.
everything he could there. And then you got a job at Target,
yeah.
right? And worked there for another 5 years, which is great. Okay, so tell us this story.
When I started working at Target, they asked me if I wanted to learn to register, even though I said yes, even though my staff thought it might be too hard, so I proved them wrong.
Yeah, so actually, Jareth, he'll talk about it in the Social Security section, but he's got a money manager for your Social Security income, right?
Yeah.
And so, he gets some help with budgeting. And so Jareth called me after work one day and said, "Hey, they asked me if I wanted to help out at the register tonight. And I said, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh no, uh-oh, let's see what'll happen. And I said, well, how'd it go? You said it went great. And I asked Jareth, wow, what would you do if you had a customer that came up and started yelling at you saying you charged him the wrong thing?
I would call my manager, and they would fix it for me.
Yeah, he had all the right answers. So thank goodness I wasn't there as a job coach, because I might have said, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. But thank goodness I wasn't there because, yeah, he proved us wrong, right?
Yeah.
He did just fine. So then when it came to overflow and they needed help, then that's what you did. You did the register.
Some of my duties at Target, collecting carts and bringing them in for guests.
And after a while, you got tired of that?
Yeah.
Especially out in the heat all day?
Yeah.
Because it gets pretty hot over here?
Yeah. I worked a second job at the movie theater, but working too much overall and needed to decompress, relax, and kick back, so I gave them my notice.
Yeah, it's nice to have a few days off every week, right?
Yeah. My newest job at Kohl's for a year and a half.
Oh boy, we got to update that. It's been over 2 years now, almost 2.5. Okay, so you were looking for something different. One of the things that I think your team really helped you think about and that you really respected was that even when you had some tough times at Target, everybody said, hey, it's always easier to get a job when you have a job.
Yeah.
So don't just, cut it off. And so he was able to have a good break at Target. When he had a new job, he'd say, okay, I'm giving my notice. Thank you so much. And moved on to Kohl's. What do you do there?
I do Amazon returns.
So Amazon returns. So he's indoors. He doesn't have to worry about closing. He doesn't have to worry about the heat. And now something that I don't think you would have been able to do before those other jobs, you do pretty much all customer service.
Yeah.
And that's a tough job for anybody that's done customer service on returns. And it's a very sort of high-tech job. Again, do you have a job coach there?
No.
Nope. So most of our coaching comes on the way to work and in the mornings, getting him ready for work, getting him pumped up for work, helping him to realize why it's important to go to work. And then at the end of the day,
Heard that he has lunch money.
Yep.
Yep, having a working guy's lunch is important.
Yep.
Right. But then getting home, how do you get home?
The bus.
Yeah, the bus or transit, or sometimes if the bus is taking too long, what can you do?
Call Uber or Lyft.
Uber or Lyft if he wants to pay extra, because sometimes he doesn't want to wait outside too long. But that's like anybody else.
At work, I earn Employee of the Month. Paycheck helps support my hobbies. Yes, I'm a big UCLA football fan and basketball fan. Oh yeah, I do my chores.
That's still got to do that. You don't pay anybody for that.
I love going to Disneyland and Legoland and other places with my paychecks. I used to think that no one listened to me what I wanted. I don't threaten to fire my staff anymore. Sometimes I do, but then I contact them and tell them that I really didn't mean it. My coaches support me transitioning to work in the morning and drive me to work. I use Access Dial or Lyft to get home after work. I coordinate all my transportation rides and my work schedule and sports schedules and appointments and with my life.
Yep. And that was hard at first, but now you do it all.
Yep. I also want to tell you what I look forward to outside my work hours. Working out at Planet Fitness, going to UCLA and high school football games, buying more Star Wars Lego sets, planning more vacations, doing more sports. I even became a homeowner. So let me tell you more about it.
Oh yeah, what's that picture of?
Me in Vegas at the Super Bowl experience.
Super Bowl experience. You and your roommate decided to guess we're going to go to the Super Bowl. It's close.
Yeah.
Let's go to Vegas. So okay, so what do you do as a result of working?
I bought a timeshare near Legoland.
Yeah, on the beach, right?
Yep.
And one thing Jareth has really taught us that it's important for everyone to have, for all of us to have something to look forward to. And having something to look forward to helps us get through the days that are maybe a little tougher, helps us get us through a rougher week at work, as we want to make sure we've got things on the calendar. And so I know I always tell you, even when you're coming back from a good time at your timeshare on the beach in Legoland, what do I tell you when you're on your way back?
Always have something planned for the next time.
Yep, start working on the next trip. Want to see another trip on the calendar,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, we're going to get depressed.
Working gets me good things in my life.
Absolutely. So does anyone have any questions of Jareth while we've got him here?
Not yet. They're busy typing. So Jareth, you said you used to sleep through meetings that were about you, right?
Yeah.
What do you do now?
I advocate for myself.
Yep. Tell everybody what you want. I think that's a real positive change. That's been really big. And I think your experiences also show that, when you're a teenager coming out of school, it's okay to have an entry-level job for a while. And you did that with Six Flags, and you took a little more responsibility, did the Target thing. And it's like, okay, you really want to get out of janitorial. So, then you went over to where you're at now at Kohl's, and that's more of a high-tech job. You gotta, I don't know. I don't even know if I got the skills to do all the stuff you did, checking all the things in and out and all that. But yeah, we're all really impressed with where you're at, and looking forward to seeing where the next thing takes you in another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Yep.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, Jareth. That means you had a very thorough, well-developed presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
You're welcome.
All right. So again, just to recap a little bit, what type of transition services should you request in your ITP or IEP or individualized transition plan and individualized education plan once you turn 16? Something to advocate for are to have on and off campus paid and volunteer work-based experiences. What we find is it takes an average of 3 different work placements for people to figure out what they want to do. And we got this through a grant where we specifically assisted a lot of folks on the autism spectrum to be able to become employed. And again, takes an average of 3 placements. We look at a job loss not as something bad, but we look at it as an opportunity to learn what worked and what didn't work. And with each placement, we learn more, and each person learns more. But if people don't have real experiences working, either in paid or volunteer work experiences in typical settings, then how on earth are they going to know what they want to do? Okay. And so it's really important. And I think that's one of the challenges that all of our youth without disabilities have, is that they don't have a lot of real life experiences in trying out different types of jobs, which were more typical in the past. We had a lot more work-based experiences in school as part of middle school and high school life. We had different shop classes and things like that. We prepared people for different vocational type jobs. And I don't see that effort as much. I happen to teach at one of our local universities. I'm an adjunct faculty, so I teach part-time. But I think we did a disservice to our youth when we say that everybody should go to college. Because what does that say about the people that don't, or the people that aren't interested? I don't think we should demean people that don't necessarily go to college, but maybe go straight into work or straight into other things and supporting themselves or their family. That's not something that should be looked down upon. And at some point, people might want to go to college later in life when they have something that they really want to learn. But just saying that everybody should go to college just because what? I'm not sure that's a good thing for everybody. We need to value a variety of different opportunities that people can have when they exit traditional school-funded services. Maybe going part-time to community college and doing some part-time work. That's a good way for people to gain some more experiences. And we should be assisting people to have lots of different experiences so they can figure out what they want to do. So helpful skills for youth that promote successful and career employment outcomes. And some of this is really kind of simple stuff, but we were asked by some of the local transition teachers that are assisting students from age 18 to 22, what are good exit skills that folks have to have? And so these are just some basics. One is understanding that money buys things. Earning a weekly allowance while you grow up, even at a young age, helps. Learning to be able to keep track of personal items like backpack, phone, wallet, sunglasses, etc. Again, even Jareth, when he turned 19, that was a bit of a challenge. Not a challenge anymore, but at first it really was. And he would get mad at other people. How come you didn't remind me to charge my phone? How come you didn't remind me to take my keys? Now I'm locked out. How come? And it's like, whoa, you're a young adult now. We've got to find a way for you to sort of figure those things out. And he doesn't like taking direction from coaches, let's say. So having his own checklist, and then after a while, he didn't need it. Being able to follow a word or picture checklist of instructions can also be really helpful, just like what Jareth had at first. Having a daily or weekly set of chores to be responsible for. And I encourage families when I work on individual transition plans, I encourage families to have their sons and daughters that may have disability labels to make sure they're included in the list of chores that have to be done at home, just like any other sibling. They need to make sure that they have those kind of experiences and learn that that's part of the responsibility of maintaining a household. There's also a lot of skills in there that may assist them with some entry level and then later on other type of job experiences and career. Finding volunteer opportunities in your local community as a youth can also be very helpful. For example, at your church, temple, or mosque, or nonprofit agencies, are there places where you can volunteer with other volunteers and gain some useful experience? A lot of schools still in high school, they have you add up some volunteer hours, community service hours, they call it. And that's something that's really helpful to put on your resume as well.
And all of these skills transfer into usable skills at a job. So it's not just that we want somebody to do chores at home because that's what kids do. We want people to do chores at home so that they learn that there's expectations, that there's a time when something is done or done properly. There's an order that you do things, taking directions, taking constructive feedback. All of those things are learned by doing these things, and that's what helps people to be employable and keep their jobs.
And again, other helpful skills that promote successful career and employment outcomes. We want to make sure that people get their California ID or California driver's license by age 18 and be able to keep it or a copy of it on their person. Okay. Get your TAP card, your transit card, or access services card to help you get around the community. And we'll talk more about that in a future session. Get a library card and know how to access those services. There's a lot of services that are available at the library, both online services, checkout services, music streaming, use of computers in the library that can be really beneficial for students of all ages. So make sure you access your library and the services that they and the resources that they have to offer. Having a cell phone and knowing how to use it is also a real plus. Knowing how to use it not just for games or to go on the internet, but can you text? Can you make and receive calls? A lot of times people use a lot of the other functions, but they're not very proficient at either texting or making or receiving calls, or if you have access to email on your phone, are you able to use that? Even though a lot of our younger generation doesn't use email as much, it's still used in the business world quite a bit.
I think we have to add when we're talking about the cell phones these days is being able to go on apps and use them, whether it's Uber and Lyft, or whether you're ordering food through a Uber Eats, or whether you're using your phone to pay for something. Do you tap? Do you swipe? All of those things. It's not so important that people know how to count change anymore. Very few times in a month do I ever have to count change, but I swipe my card on a daily basis.
Yeah, so helping people to learn how to use a gift card is a real good skill, and or even a card that you can load up over time, whether you use it for fast food or something like that, that they can learn to use, and that way it won't really be abused, or even if it's lost, if it's only got 20 bucks on there that you can reload, then it's not the end of the world. So, but teaching people to learn how to use that and punch in a 4-digit code if they need it to be able to spend it. And even assisting them to use maybe their own EBT or CalFresh card if they have it, to assist their family or whatever, if they're eligible for something like that. Okay. Also, being aware of traffic awareness, parking lot safety. A lot more accidents actually occur in the parking lot than actually on the street. So teaching students, so when you're grocery shopping, when you take your kids out to just any community place, teaching them how to wait at the end of the curb, to teach them to wait at the end of the aisle, teaching them to walk on one side or the other in a parking lot when you're going up, so that you are not in the middle where you're more vulnerable. Teaching them to watch for cars. One of the things that, of course, has been challenging, I think, for all of us as instructors, is we've got so many electric vehicles now that don't make any sounds. So a lot of times our students, especially students with visual impairments or students that maybe only use their peripheral vision, that might be on the spectrum, that don't use a lot of their direct supervision to look for things, they relied a lot on the changes in the sounds. And now we've got electric cars that make no noise at all. And that adds another wrinkle to our sort of safety training. So anything we can do to improve safety awareness, traffic awareness in parking lots, places like that is going to be really important, because people are going to have to navigate their way to and from work, and they might even work in some of those environments. Restroom safety is also important. I've actually got some booklets that we've used to help teenagers and young adults. We have some people that don't like the confinement of having pants on in a male restroom, and they want to pull their pants down to their ankles. That can promote maybe the wrong thoughts of somebody else that's in there. So we encourage those people to use a stall if that's something that we can't train them out of or teach them out of while they're on their own, or to at least keep their pants up while they're urinating in more of a open public area, because we know that can lead to some potential abuse down the road. Pedestrian safe skills in local neighborhoods and frequently accessed community locations are also really helpful. Learning bus, transit, and transportation skills. A lot more people are using the Lyft and the Uber kind of stuff, so teaching people how to access transportation in that way as well. Assist your youth to join youth groups like Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, Parks and Rec activities, and other opportunities that promote interactions with same age typical peers. That's where people are going to improve their communication and social skills, which are so valuable in any employment setting. Also, it's important to have a life outside of school. Again, clubs, youth groups, park and rec programs, sports programs, church and temple. And it's also good to remember that therapies don't really constitute a community life. So a red flag for me, when I spend time with families and sort of are assisting them with resources or going through an assessment of some type, whether it's transition or behavior assessment, a red flag for me is when I look at the student's typical weekly schedule. And if outside of school, Monday through Friday, they've got therapy every afternoon and a therapy on the weekend. And my question usually is, when do they have an opportunity to just be a kid, or to do something relaxing? Because sometimes we need a break from the therapies, even though I know a lot of times families want to grab hold of any therapy that's available that might possibly provide some benefit for their young children or adult children. We also want to make sure that they have that balance, and that balance of being able to sort of have a typical life. I did an assessment at a high school for a young man on the spectrum, and I was very excited to see that he was in the regular school band, and because my boys were in the school band also, and he played the trumpet, and I'm thinking, this is great, because there's a lot of extracurricular kind of stuff that he's going to have those natural social interactions with, and he was fully integrated and included there. I thought it was great. But when I visited him on a Friday afternoon, then the band went down onto the PE ground because they were going to practice for their marching band event, the competition they had the next day on a Saturday. And the teacher told the student I was visiting to go and practice his trumpet in the room by himself. And I said, wait a minute, why? I'm thinking, okay, why isn't he included? What's going on? And the teacher and the aide said, well, unfortunately, mom won't let him be in the competition because he has a social skills training group on Saturdays. And I go, oh my gosh. So he's missing out on the real social skills because he's going to some social skills group, therapy group with other kids with disabilities. And oh my goodness, I almost lost it. I had to call mom and said, boy, he's missing out on the real things in life because of this social skills training you think he should go to. He's going to get all the social and more if he's able to just compete in the band stuff with the rest of his peers. So make sure that people have a life outside of school, and then encourage and develop routines with natural supports that aren't either paid or family. Teach students to leave security blankets, things that they feel a need to hold on to at home or at a safe place, maybe in their backpacks or other places, in their pocket. Is there another place they can put it where they feel comfortable so that it's not going to be stigmatizing on the job? Okay. And we supported a gentleman that always had to have something in his hand. He liked to hold dice at the time we got him his first job in high school. And we encouraged him to put it in his pocket, but then he showed that he could do the job with the dice. And it's like, okay, all right, whatever. But sometimes if they can just put something in a locker and they put something where they know it's going to be safe because they don't feel comfortable or don't want to trust somebody else to hold on to whatever that security blanket is, try to find a way that at a young age to make them less dependent on those things, or to have a safe place for them to put those things while they're on the job. And then also help people develop hobbies, and hopefully hobbies like Jareth has with his Lego sets and things like that actually promote his motivation to make sure he's got work earnings so he can continue to spend money on those hobbies. I'm going to grab Jab. Hey, Jab, you ready?
No. Not today, but not.
You don't like it?
Oh, fuck.
Okay, no, you have to.
All right, I'll go when I'm going.
Okay, well then, come on. Everybody gonna hear you.
Scott, when he's ready, you can unmute yourself. In the meantime, Javin is one of our friends who really does enjoy speaking, but doesn't like change. So making a transition here.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, thanks, Javin.
Is that old?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get rid of that one.
Yeah. Me. Me and working is important to me.
Oops.
Work helps me to get the good stuff in life. I enjoy working Dollar Tree. I've been working for 19 years.
I was wondering about that. I gotta change that, huh?
Yeah, I know. I've been an extraordinary coach that supports me through my day program. In the holiday season, I also work at a second job, the Service Army bell ringer. Holidays are like big traditions with my family. Having multiple jobs has helped me and my roommate to move out of an apartment in a not so great area where the rent keeps going up, up, up. Let me tell you, my roommate Crystal and I did.
So before we get to that, so you and Crystal,
Mhm.
just a little history. Crystal had worked with our agency for a few years, and Javin had been in our day program for several years. And then both Javin and Crystal made the decision. Both of them were at the point where they were ready to move into their own place for the first time.
Yes.
And so you first lived in an apartment, like you said,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so now you can share what you guys did.
We bought a house. Me and Crystal homeowners.
And that's good. That means your rent doesn't keep going up.
Right. Some good skills have I learned. I don't open the door for strangers. I always ask who's it first. I know how to shut off the water to turn to the toilet if it overflows. I can use a plunger too. How I get budget? I have my money manager who helps me to pay the bills. I split my recycling money to help pay my utility bills. The rest of spending money. I still need to know about things in advance. I am a lot more flexible since I moved into my own place. I've been done lots of new things, including vacations, moving to my own place, and particle in Caltash. My family, thanks, and I have been pretty amazing. Oops,
Well, that's it.
I see.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No,
Want to see if we have any questions?
no, that's fine.
Well, just in case, we can wait for a second.
Okay, there are two questions, Javin. I'm not sure if they're for you or if they're for Scott, but hang up or hang out and let me see. What could we do at the schools, Scott? Because it seems like when it comes to students with special needs, schools just move the kids along and don't really focus on helping our kids with their future.
Yeah, we call that babysitting services. So I think the schools have something in place that I think are really underutilized, and that's that ITP, that individualized transition plan that's a part of the person's IEP that should be in place by the time every student turns 16. And we need to put a little more teeth in that. We need to help families think about at age 22 or whenever you exit school services, What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? You know, and how can we help now in the limited time we have you in school? What experiences can we and skills can we provide for you that will help you to get there? And that's where that work-based learning opportunities are so important. Now, Javin has always loved having a paycheck and has always loved money, and money is important so that he can buy things. And so work is very important to you, right?
Yeah.
And when he knows he's going to get paid, that's a big deal. He's done some volunteer stuff as well, but he really gravitates toward the pay thing because he knows that means he's going to get a paycheck. And I know it keeps him to get the good cell phones and internet service and all those things that he really finds important. Okay, the other question, Lori?
The second question is also for you. My teenager has a flip phone, and I don't want to transition him to a smartphone just yet. Should I just bite the bullet? And yes, I can even answer that. Yes. I am a firm believer that when your children are minors and you have a lot more control over what they can and can't do, that's when you introduce them to things that could be potentially dangerous. So, internet usage and cell phones, what to do, what not to do, how to spend your money, grades. It's not so important if you fail a spelling test in second grade as if you don't turn in your master's thesis. So learning lessons when you're younger and your parents are there to support you and even though it seems like a crisis, whatever went wrong, it's really not. Definitely, I think people are using smartphones now for everything. That's how they're going to call an Uber. That's how they're going to, pay for their meal or whatever. And even if somebody's never going to be without a coach, they still, empowering them to make their own call for Uber or whatever it is super important. So yes. And then next, if you do not have a service coordinator at regional center, like about many of us do, this is probably somebody from regional center. If you do not have a service coordinator at regional center, you can still request a regional representative to attend the IEP or transition meeting. And I know that to be true. Regional center will send somebody to that IEP. They will send somebody to, if you've got a court related incident, they will get somebody there, but they don't read minds. So you have to ask regional center to come and represent you. They don't know when your IEP is or when any other important things are, but they will be there, regardless of if you have a service coordinator or not.
Great point. And great, again, that advocacy, if you don't ask, it'll never happen. So yeah, hopefully you feel comfortable to ask. I know that's one of the things I include in my recommendations for ITPs is that the regional center worker needs to be invited, not just the last IEP, but the other ones, so they know where you're going. And it's also helpful for families to know what services are available after school, and can we visit, or can we see some people in the community, or get an idea of what other services are like, or what's the SDP, that self-determination program, all about, and how do we find out more about that? Where are some ways we can resource that?
If you belong to any parent support groups or any sort of a support group, get the regional center and get these other people out as guest speakers. They have a lot of information to share. So don't be afraid to get resources to these group meetings and have them share, the truth behind things. I think the question a few questions ago about how do we get the schools to do something, be really mindful of the goals that they're proposing, and if those goals will meet the future that you envision for the child. So if they're if their goal is for somebody to count coins up to $1, how well does that fit into the future? And you can say, well, I'd really rather they learn to whatever. There's probably a lot of things more important than counting coins, but swipe their card, memorize their PIN, interact.
What bus is going to take you to the movie theater, the important things.
Yeah, finding the bus to the movie theater, exactly. So
And also there, like Lori gets shared and like the person in the chat shared, the regional center, if you go, for example, to North LA County Regional Center's website and just click on their calendar, they have a whole list of family support groups that meet on a regular basis. And we attended, myself and people we support have attended a lot of those meetings over the last year to sort of let them know about. We've had many of those families have taken these webinars, and just to let them know of other resources that are out here, and to have people share their stories, and to help families with younger kids just to think about what are things you need to do now to help you to, the sort of help to plan that career in the future, and that everybody should have those same opportunities regardless of what the severity of the disability label is. And again, North LA has all these, along with contact numbers, and the Family Focus Resource Center also assists North LA. They're sort of joined together there when it comes to the family support groups. And we really encourage you to get involved. They really become like an extension of your family, people going through a lot of the same things.
Also, the same person is saying, don't forget that Regional Center has an education advocate, and parents can consult with that person if the consumers are not being appropriately supported through their IEP.
And North LA just hired a new employment specialist, sort of an employment advocate that is supposed to be a resource. And I haven't met this person yet, but we're really excited because that position has been open for a while. And now all the regional centers will be having this employment specialist as part of their team. So we're real excited about that, because they're really looking at these statistics, and they want to improve the use of people that are accessing competitive integrated employment and the paid internship program. And as we share, these are incentives that are available for, to everyone. Even for people that maybe start out working only an hour or so a week, or an hour a day, a couple times a week, maybe due to sensory issues, or just getting used to, or stamina, building up their stamina, or just getting used to having to be in a specific work environment for a period of time. People can start that part-time, and it's okay. It'll still be considered competitive integrated employment if they're paid directly by the employer, and if it's integrated, and if they're making minimum wage or better. Well, Javin,
And I
thank you
believe
for...
that Javin and Crystal are the first people in the state of California, the first people I know of, who was a regional center consumer and a person providing support that purchased a house together. And they purchased it a few years ago, and the equity in that house is amazing right now. So
when you moved into your house?
2018.
2018.
Yep.
So in 2018, and both families were very helpful. They're both first-time buyers, but now they both have equity. Either one of them wants to move out, then they can pay off the other half, but each one of them is now earning equity in their homes. As
And
opposed to,
it's the first homeowner in his family. He has, I believe, 5 or 6 siblings and 3 parents. And out of all of them, he is the first homeowner in his entire family. His mom still rents, his dad still rents, all of his brothers and sisters still rent. Javin owns his home. So that's awesome, Javin.
Yeah, that's nice.
So thank you for coming out, Javin.
Welcome.
You want to head home now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Goodbye. Yeah. Thanks.
all right.
Gotta pay it, please.
Yeah, we're gonna pay you coming up. Okay, Cindy's gonna cut a check.
Oh,
Cindy.
oh, Sydney.
Yes. You know Cindy, right?
Oh, yes, Sydney.
Okay.
Payday's the 25th, Javin.
What?
23rd. I'm sorry. Wait, let me see March. The
Don't tell Lori, she'll tell you the pay.
25th. Payday's the 25th.
25th.
Yep.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks.
Okay, bye. I'll get paid 25th then.
You'll get paid on the 25th,
Bye-bye.
because our grant is paying all of our self-advocates to present, which is part of the good deal of this here. All right. Well, that gets us closer to the end here. So again, concluding thoughts. Students who do not work will live in poverty and have less control over their lives if they're going to rely on SSI and government resources. And people with intellectual and developmental disabilities will always be better off financially when they work. Even when their SSI benefits are adjusted down due to work income, people will always earn more when they work.
Scott, can we leave now?
You can leave now. Yep, you're good.
Okay.
Thanks, Davin.
Welcome.
And everybody here is getting ready to leave too. One thing that we have available for those of you that might be families or consumers or service providers within North LA County Regional Center, one of the stipulations in our grant is that we can provide additional problem solving and consulting following these series of grant webinars specific to specific individuals or groups related to employment or career development for both youth and adults. So to sign up for that, you can give us an email at cieinfo@avenuessls.org. Again, you must be a consumer, family member, vendor, or service coordinator within North LA County Regional Center to be eligible for the extended consulting that we're going to offer. And again, hopefully you've got the link already because you signed up for today. But if you want to share with other people to be able to come on to these webinars, again, we're going to have people with shared experience, self-advocates that'll be sharing their stories to give examples for each of the webinars we have coming up. You can go to any of the links here, including our website, and people can sign up that way, just the same way that you did. All right, so if anybody has any additional questions, we're willing to stay on. Otherwise, we thank everybody for coming on today. We did the previous sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. This one we try to do after work. And thanks everybody for hanging with us during dinner time.
I did just allow people to unmute. If you'd like to, Scott, you should stop the recording now so that people can ask whatever questions they want.